We're going to begin this piece by just doing a really rough sketch of some tall mountains in the background. This is going to be one of the focal points of this piece. Once you have that sketched out, with some clean water, wet the upper part of your sketch. So this is going to be the sky behind the mountain. Now I already have some blue in my palette, and to that blue I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's Gray. You can feel free to use any blue you have. I can't tell you specifically what this blue is. It's just a mixture of all the blues that are on that side of the palette. And with a very wet brush, we're putting a light layer of that mixture onto the sky and just let it blend on its own. We don't want an even wash of color on the sky, so we wanted to make it look as if it's a little bit cloudy. So I'm going to add in certain areas, I'll add in a darker concentration of the mixture, and in other areas, a much lighter concentration. Now I'm going to go in with a little mixture of peacock blue and some of the other blues that I have on here, and just add in a lighter dabble of blue to the sky. Again, I am not mixing it in. I'm just with the tip of my brush just tapping it in, tapping that color in. So you can achieve this by just using a variety of blues, a lighter blue, a darker blue as you see here, and a dusky gray such as the Payne's Gray. And just tap it all in and let it all mix together. Now I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, and with plain water, while the paper is still wet, I'm going to tap in some water. And this is just going to separate the paint a little bit and just make it look a little bit more like a snowy type texture. Now I am adding in a diluted mixture of peacock blue and anthraquinone blue by M. Graham. And again, I am adding a lot of water and just a small amount of paint. And I'm going to go in and trace the very top of the mountain. Once you have traced that in, go in with plain water and spread that paint out. We don't want this to have too much blue in it. We want it to be as light as possible. So just plain water and pull that paint out of the top of the mountain. And continue adding just plain water to the edges until you get all the way to the bottom. Again, just keep going in with water along the bottom, and along the tops go in with a light mixture of your blue. You can see here in the middle of the mountains, I'm adding just a little bit more color. And again, diluting that color with water. So what I'm going for here is I want the peaks of this mountain, of this side of the mountain on the left side, I want the peaks to be a lot darker than the bottom portion of the mountain. So what we're going to do now is break up the mountain a little. As you see here on the right hand side, I am adding in a higher saturation of that blue along the top, and I'm breaking it up right down the middle. And this is just going to show the edge of the mountain, and on the side that's white is going to be sort of like the back side of the mountain. We are going to continue watering down the bottom of the mountain, and then with a paper towel, if that mountain has gotten a bit too dark, just pick up certain areas of it. We want to leave a little bit of blue, we want to leave a little mixture, and we want to have some of the white of the paper showing through. So pick a little bit of that up and then thoroughly dry your piece before moving on to the next step. If your sky was a little bit wet when you started the mountain, you might get a little of the blue running into the sky. So at this point, after my mountain is completely dry, I'm going to go in and define some of those edges. And again, with a small brush, I'm using the exact same technique that I was using earlier, which is adding more color to the tip of the mountain and then diluting it with water as we go down. So you only need to do this if some of your blue has run into the sky. A little tip to give your mountain more texture. So since you're using a smaller brush, once you lay down the water or the blue paint along the tip of the mountain, your brush begins to dry off. So run that dry brush along the bottom of the mountain and it will give it a bit of texture. Allow it to thoroughly dry before moving on to the next part. So for this next part, we are going to wet the entire right hand of the mountain. So right where you put that ridge, we are going to wet that entire area. And we're just going to add the slightest bit of Payne's gray to give that area a little bit of shadow. Don't forget to put a little bit of the Payne's gray along the pencil mark to cover that up, and make sure that you water it down. Again, just like with everything else, make sure you water it down. You want to keep it as nice and soft as possible. Make sure the piece is thoroughly dry before moving on to the next step. So we're going to add one giant tree off to the left side of the mountain. So what we're going to do is, with the very tip of your size 2 brush, we are going to draw a straight line down the left side. Once that's done, I am going to move on to a bigger brush. And with the tip of my brush, all I'm going to do is just start pressing down with a very, very high saturation of Payne's Gray mixed with blue. So I'm going to start in the middle where the line is, and I am going to press down fairly hard on the brush to add little strokes, which are going to be the leaves of the tree. So I'm going to press down fairly hard and work my way down and just shape that tree out into the shape of a tree, so into into the shape of a cone. Press that down until you are satisfied with the way it looks. So if you're not very happy with your tree making skills, as I am not, but I went ahead and I did it with this one because we are going to cover up a lot of that tree with snow. So it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to have a snow dusting over it. So just give it the illusion of a tree by pressing down on your brush and leave it as is. Now I'm switching back to my size 2, and with the very tip of the brush, we are going to add some uh, leafless trees, sticks. We're just going to add some character to the right side. We don't want to leave that empty. So we're just going to draw some branches. And with this, you can go crazy. There's no rhyme or reason. You can just kind of draw in your branches as you'd like and throw in as many or as little as you would like on this side. So this landscape is kind of looking a little bare to me. So I'm going to throw in a little stream of water coming out from behind the tree over to the bottom of, to the base of the mountain. So you can do this just by making the stream of water a little thinner by the tree and have it spread out, get a little thicker as we come out of that part. What we're going to do is completely wet the inside of your lines and adding a little bit of Payne's Gray to my blue mixture. I am just going to trace that line that I made and just let the paint seep into the middle. So we again, just like we did with the mountains, we want this the line, the edges to be as saturated as we can. A trick to allow as much of that paint to seep in as possible is to lift your brush up every few strokes and allow that paint to run in. And then with a dry brush, I'm just going to help it along by pushing it in a little bit. Remember, it's still a little bit wet, so that really is going to help that along. If you wanted to add a little bit of a lighter color blue to the inside, feel free to do that as well. And now taking your white, which can be Copic opaque white, it can be acrylic, it can be watercolor or gouache, whatever you have handy, we're going to add some snow caps to the tree. So what we're going to do is the same exact technique that we used when we were adding the greenery to the tree. We are going to take the very tip of our brush and press down pretty hard. And we are going to press down along the previous marks that you made, adding in that white. So one thing that I really like to do here, and you'll see it on the very top left hand side of the tree, is in certain areas I will allow the white to blend in a little bit with a little bit of that blue, and it will give the white a nice little bluish tint to it. And I just think that looks really pretty. It gives it a natural shadow when you do that. So I would advise if your white starts blending in a little with the blue, just leave it. I think that it looks really fine just like that. So you want some areas of bright white, and then some areas of like a muted white or a soft blue underneath it. So you want to continue adding the white all the way to the bottom of the tree, so until you reach the bottom. And just remember while you're doing this to be conscious of leaving some of that blue underneath. And now with a white gel pen, I am going to do the same thing except to the dry branches. So on the very tips of the dry branches with my white gel pen, I'm going to add a little bit of a snow flurry to the top, and also where the branches connect to each other. So to that little V area, we want to make sure that we get all of those as well. And to finish this piece off, I am going to take some Copic opaque white and the smaller brush, the size 2, because this brush doesn't hold as much water as a larger brush, and this is definitely what we want. We're gonna run a fairly dry brush with that white, and again, you can use any white you have. We are going to run it across the mountain in order to give it a bit of a snowy texture. And you definitely want your brush to be fairly dry, not too dry where you won't be able to add any texture, but also not too wet where it starts to puddle or act like watercolor. And once you are satisfied with the amount of snowy texture that you have on the mountain, you're done. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you for the next one.